I do remember my first bet very well. It was a £5 free bet. I saw an advert for a £5 bet on one of the advertising hoards by the side of the pitch. I'd watched rugby 1,000 times, but a few things had happened in my life. I'd nearly lost my son to a quite severe epileptic fit about a week before. I'd been passed over for a promotion at work. I had a 3-hour round trip commute 5 days a week. After my first bet, I just began to watch sport a bit more. I began to be more interested in football and rugby. I began to read up about it a bit more. And I began to gamble more. I kept it a secret, kept everything a secret from Emma. And then slowly I realised I was losing more often than I was winning. And I was cross. So I thought I'd win all my money back in one go. And I guess after about 3 or 4 months, I'd lost £700, something like that. A tennis match was coming up. I needed £1,000 to win all my money back in one go if that bet was successful. And I lost that bet. I'd stepped over a line. I'd gone from being someone that just has an occasional bet to someone who was doing something more serious. The consequences of that bet were that I had a bit of a hole in my finances. So rather than stop and talk to Emma about it, I began to put bigger bets on, larger bets. I began to spend more time gambling. I began to withdraw as a husband. For the first time in my marriage, I began to lie to my wife. And I'd pushed God away and said, you know, with all the trappings of success that I'd found in the city with a 6-figure salary and owning our own house, I kind of said to God, I haven't got time for you anymore. Thanks a lot, I'll take it from here. Which meant I'd lost my reasoning. And it was it wasn't immediate. I didn't become a gambling addict straight away. It was a slow descent. And over the course of 3 years, I went from someone who just had an occasional bet to someone who was completely absorbed by gambling. In the end, I lost £750,000 over the course of 3 years. I'd lost my job directly as a consequence of my gambling. Emma had left, she'd taken the children with her. I'd begun selling things in our house just to keep my betting going. I had 5 months worth of rent that I owed. I had living off a sack of mouldy potatoes, couldn't afford to heat the house. And I sold the sword of honour that I'd been given by the Queen on the day that I graduated from Sandhurst Royal Military Academy. Well, I reached rock bottom. I realised I was either going to take my own life or I was going to commit a crime. And my brother and my mum came up, knocked on the door, and they said, you're about to be evicted. You've got a choice. You can walk the streets or you can come down to Kent and find some recovery. And that's when I was completely broken, totally humiliated. I had a black bin liner of stuff and £73,000 worth of debt. But now it was all out in the open, I could do something about it. And the first thing I did is I got down on my knees and I asked God to forgive me. And I asked him to come in and fix me. My pathway to recovery after I'd got down on my knees and got right with God was a gradual one. I put some blocks on my computer. It's a great bit of software called K9, letter K, the number 9, and it blocked all gambling content from my computer. I went along to Gamblers Anonymous and discovered I wasn't the only one out there. I began to exercise again, and that helped me with my self-esteem, which was very, very low. I was ashamed of what I'd done. And one of the biggest things is that I got some help from my debt, from a charity that worked for my mum's church and the church I became a member of. And every day that went past, it got better. My wife and I got back together again for a brief period of time. But sadly, because I hadn't told her and she'd found out about my gambling, we never got the trust back. And so sadly, we split apart. But we're good friends now. And it's time with my boys that I love the most, and I see them most weekends. And I run a recovery course at my church, which is exciting. We get 40 or 50 people each week that come along with all kinds of addictions. And giving something back is really important. I wrote my story in a book, Tales I Lose, and I do quite a bit of speaking now on the back of that. I talk to the government and ask them what they're doing about some of the laws relating to problem gambling. And it's young people that I care about the most. They're the ones that are the most adept at smartphone technology, and they're the ones that respond to the advertising. So life now is much better. I've got my priorities back. I've got my relationship back with Christ, and I do feel for any addiction that you really have to replace it with something that's more wholesome. And for me, That's my faith, my relationship with God.